Hey guys, Chris here, and I am a Ukrainian Canadian. So I promised all of you guys that I would make a video in regards to the military map of Ukraine, and I decided I'll make it today instead of tomorrow. I actually had a lot of things to talk about, so might as well make the video today. Um, so let's look at the global map of the current situation, the military map of the current situation in Ukraine. As we see, obviously everything is happening in eastern Ukraine and the south of Ukraine. So it starts with Kharkiv all the way up to Kherson. And there's three very hot spots right now. You have the Kharkiv front, you have the Severodonetsk, which is by far the hottest front at this in this current situation. And then you have Kherson and the Zaporizhia, which is very stagnant at this point front. So let's dip into the Severodonetsk front, because this is the most important and the hottest front right now, as of June 20th. So if you haven't heard of this town, maybe you should, because it's been, there's been a lot of fighting ongoing for the past 2 months there. And the Russians are basically pushing at all costs through this front. Why? Because the Russian command gave them the order to take the city at all costs. And again, why? Because they control 90% of the Luhansk Oblast, which means that for them to claim a victory, some type of victory, they need to take Severodonetsk and the other town of Lysychansk. Then the Russians can comfortably say they've met their objectives, and for them, this is a major milestone that they have achieved, essentially. This is how they see it. And so for the past 2 months, the Russians have been trying to take the city. They have been shelling, they have been bringing troops in, storming the city, and with very limited results, right? They're in control of certain areas of the city, but sometimes they get pushed back. The Ukrainians are still there, and they're mostly around the industrial area of Severodonetsk, which is right here. And there's still some contested areas within the actual city center. It's very elastic at this point. Sometimes you'll see some red here. Sometimes you'll see blue in here, right? It's going to be very elastic because it's urban combat. In the Ukrainian strategy, in this front, in this city of Severodonetsk, is that they have seen a lot of success fighting Russians in urban combat settings. If anybody knows anything about the Russians, that they do terrible in urban combat. We just have to look at Kharkiv and Kiev in the first phase of the invasion to see how poorly it went for them. They didn't have the command structure for it. The communication wasn't there, the logistics. And so they were very badly defeated once they try to get into very urban areas. And it's the same here in Severodonetsk, except now they're pushing more troops because their logistics are better. And so they're finding a little bit more success. But even if the Russians manage to take Severodonetsk, they still have to take Lysychansk. And Lysychansk has a much better terrain than Severodonetsk because geographically speaking, it has higher ground and it overlooks Severodonetsk. So the Ukrainians have very good positions to attack the Russians who are trying to cross the river that is basically flowing right here. It's a natural defense for the Ukrainian army. If you guys remember as well, Bilohorivka is a town where the Russians attempted to cross the river on the western side of the front, and it went catastrophically bad for them. They've lost about 500 men during that one crossing event, and about 100 military vehicles. It was catastrophic. It pretty much eliminated a battalion, Russian battalion, during those few days of fighting. So they've learned they're not pushing as much on this side. They're pushing more on the eastern side now. And their strategy is to create essentially encircling the Ukrainians like this and cutting off the supply roads. There are two right now. There's the one that's going through Bakhmut, and they're very close to that road. So it's a very risky road for Ukrainians. So the last one the Ukrainians are using is actually from Lysychansk, and it goes somewhere here in the middle, more in the western side of the Ukrainian-controlled area. So overall, the situation is very difficult. The Russians are still advancing, albeit slowly, but they are advancing on certain fronts. But the Ukrainians are maintaining composure and stability, which is the most important. We don't see a major collapse, like, tens of kilometers per day. Like, the advances are very slow, and Ukrainians are slowly retreating to get to better defensive positions. So this is good news for us as well. Let's head to the Kharkiv front right here. So as we see here, this has been somewhat of a stagnant front. The Ukrainians managed to get to the Russian border a few weeks ago, actually even installing border posts at one point. But again, it's very difficult to hold the line because you're so close to the Russian border, you're actually right by it. And the command right now is to not attack Russia directly. So they can't do anything in this situation. So it's a very elastic border. Every day you can see the Russians are advancing, and sometimes the Ukrainians are pushing back, taking some territory. So it's very elastic. And there's no clear definition of who is controlling what in this area by the Belgorod Oblast. And the Russians also understand the severity if Ukrainians take back this area, because Belgorod is a city that is about 30 kilometers from the front line, or 40 kilometers. So it is within artillery range of the Ukrainian military if they manage to position their artillery somewhere around here. So it's also existential for the Russians. And let's hit the very last front I want to discuss today, which is the Kherson front. This is a very successful front for the Ukrainian army. As far as I'm concerned, I've seen some very good progress in the last 2-3 weeks. The Ukrainians started with a counterattack somewhere in end of May, beginning of June, around this area, around Snihurivka and Kryvyi Rih. So this area, they've managed to take a little bit of territory, and now they're pushing hard. They're trying to collapse the Russian defenses, so then they have to retreat with massive amounts of territory, giving up massive territory to the Ukrainians. And so around the Kherson city as well, we see that the Ukrainians are getting very close to the outskirts of the city of Chornobaivka. And that is about 10 to 15 kilometers, the distance between the closest Ukrainian held territory. And they're also trying to push on both sides, on this side essentially as well. And so this is a very successful front as far as I'm concerned, because we also need to remember that the south of Ukraine is very flat. There is very little cover, and the geography is not very advantageous for neither. If you're on offensive, you need to go all in and keep pushing, because you won't have time to defend. It's too easy of a target to stay still. So Ukrainians are trying to push as much as they can. Now, in terms of a massive counteroffensive by the Ukrainian army, I cannot see this happening in the next few weeks. The Lend-Lease program by the United States is still taking time. And from the sources that I've been reading and listening to, apparently a counterattack can only be feasible by the end of August, beginning of September. Because all of this military equipment takes time to learn, takes time to bring to Ukraine, takes time to actually be put into the positions where they need to be put in. And so this is a very long procedure. So for the Ukrainian army, I think it is very possible that the earliest a major counteroffensive can occur is probably end of August or perhaps beginning of September, if not even later, sadly. So right now, what I call this is not a major counteroffensive, but better positioning by the Ukrainian army. If the Ukrainian forces see an opportunity where they can take control over a key town or key city, they will do it. And this is by any means a major counteroffensive operation. It's just getting a better ground. So for future operations, it's going to be easier for them to push. So what we see here is still very good. And I think the Ukrainians are trying to go through Novakhovka and also essentially encircle the Russians from the back. That will be still very difficult because Nova Kakhovka has been still very heavily fortified by the Russians. And I think their last resort would probably be to destroy the dam if they're suicidal, because this would mean they would pretty much flood Kherson and the vicinity, complicating the situation for Russians as well. So that's it, guys. This is the operational situation right now as of June 20th in Ukraine. Let me know if you enjoyed the video. Write down your comments, your suggestions. If you like my channel, please subscribe. And I'm very excited to hear back from any of you. If you're interested in writing to me about your opinions or anything I should add, please do it. Thanks again, guys, and I will see you very, very soon. Thank you.